When it comes to the iconic 20th century pioneers in electromagnetic research and engineering, usually Nikola Tesla is the one that comes to mind. But rarely is the name Ed Leedskalnin ever mentioned, a man that received very little recognition for his incredible feats of architecture, a man that was kind of shrouded in secrecy and kept out the public eye to some degree. Now, in 1919, a real estate man by the name of Moser was scouting land along the back roads of the Everglades when he spotted a stranger. At first, he thought it was a boy and was surprised to encounter a very small man. Moser, always friendly, offered a ride, to which the little man introduced himself. He had recently emigrated from Latvia and that he had travelled, apparently, to the Everglades to look for a specific plot of land. Moser realised that the little man had advanced tuberculosis. Mrs. Moser always welcomed the strangers her husband brought home. Life was kind of lonely in the new land. Ed Leedskalnin was very friendly, very polite, confessed outright that he didn't have a penny to his name. The Mosers selflessly took the young Ed into their home and nursed him back to health. Now, Ed talked of travels across Tibet and living with the monks, learning their way of life and meditation and the process of chi and even impossible feats. They listened with respect to his story and this search for this specific type of land that he was looking for in America. He said it was for his Sweet 16. He would never explain who this actually was, though. As soon as Ed regained his health, he continued his search for this specific location. Crazy Ed and his rusty bike became the butt of many local jokes. Neighbours watching him prodding the ground began rumours saying that he was looking for buried treasure. Ed always rejected the good farmland for some reason, and people often wondered why, to which he only smiled. One day he brought Moser to the remote plot of land. Moser was astonished at Ed to pick this worst acre in the state. It was all bedrock, which couldn't even be ploughed nor farmed. Moser, shaking his head, gladly gave the land over to Ed. A few weeks later, Moser became curious and wanted to go and find out what Ed had done with the land. And as he turned the corner, he couldn't believe his eyes. Ed somehow had cut 10-ton blocks of solid coral right out of the bedrock and hoisted it into the air. As they nervously approached this flimsy tripod, they realised there was something more than craziness in Ed. How on earth did he do it? Ed smiled and said, "It's not difficult, really. The secret is in knowing how." How did he do this? He smiled again. "Someday my Sweet 16 will come," he said. Moser and his wife were astonished. Working alone, Ed cut more blocks. He made slab walls, tables, chairs, a crescent moon, a water fountain and a sundial. Even single blocks were cut so precisely and locked without mortar. All the locals visited gasped at the astonishment. Ed was always friendly but firm. He would never tell the secret technology that he had in regarding his work and how he did it. Trying to catch him out, the neighbours would kind of do set to spying on him. Some people swear that they saw the rocks move of their own accord. However, Ed could somehow sense prying eyes and would simply stop working and would patiently wait until they gave up trying to discover his secrets. One of his neighbours, Charles Williams, remembers, "I was born and raised about 300 yards from Ed's small part of land. I would see Ed quite often at the local county store. He was a small man and I didn't think he was probably taller than I, and he was about 5'6". Probably weighed somewhere around about 100 pounds. He always looked frail, sickly, but obviously he must have been very strong. He would show us his electrical machine and how it makes electricity." Francis Wilson, another neighbour, says he was very gentle, a kind person, of course, highly intelligent. Many people thought that he was a little odd. Some nights he would sit in the moonlight and walk around the park. He'd look up into the stars and he would get very ethereal. There were many rumours about mysterious Ed. One such rumour says that he was an eccentric miser and kept stashes of money. For years, Ed felt safe in his isolation away from the harsh realities of the city. Now, late one evening in the 1930s, a gang of youths waited till Ed was alone. He never had imagined such a shocking intrusion into his private world. The attack prompted the most extraordinary fate of his life. Barely surviving this brutal robbery, Ed decided to seek safer ground. When he moved, Ed took more than just his toothbrush with him. He took everything that he had made. He hired a local truck driver and, characteristically in secrecy, he politely asked the man to step around the corner and it would be loaded up in just a minute. Piece by piece, Ed moved all £3 million of rock, 10 miles to its present location near Homestead in Florida. No one ever managed to see how he lifted these giant rocks that weighed up to 30 tons apiece. The truck driver was astonished to see huge stone blocks loaded on the truck within just a few minutes. 60 million years ago, the whole South Florida had thousands of miles of living coral reef. The rock which he used was fossil coral, which may have internal forces which only Ed understood. It's like a huge brain. Coral seems almost conscious, perhaps contemplating ancient secrets. Living coral constructs itself under the sea, sometimes into big, large castle forms. Forces deep in the earth fuse the dead coral into what is referred to as oolite, a dense, strong organic rock, and most of South Florida has little topsoil over this bedrock. A gentleman by the name of Charles Valores, who worked at a local rock quarry, was asked to try an experiment to cut giant blocks of oolite with diamond-tipped saws. However, cutting alone took several hours. The only way to break the block free from the ground was utilising brutal force. Then, as part of the test, they looked at the buoyancy of rock to see if there was anything unusual about itself. Using a 600 horsepower crane, they attempted to lift the rock from the bedrock. Quarry workers were perplexed as to what type of equipment would it take to duplicate Ed's rock. The park itself. How did he manage to do it? What equipment was he using? Charles Valores commented that, not with modern equipment, I wouldn't cut more than 4-foot slabs in length and maybe 32 inches wide. That's as much I could actually cut, and it would be a struggle at doing that. Bruce Cathay has extensively studied and written on Earth forces, and he believes that the harmonic grid inside Earth's surface can create actual anti-gravity at certain points along the grid, and that Coral Castle was built on a positive harmonic resonance. And it was this resonance that Ed took so long to locate. Cathay went on to say that Ed moved stones and coral blocks up to 25 tons and put them up literally overnight on his own. Now, after he died, researchers checked some of the instruments that he was using, and they were very primitive. Chisels, hammers, ropes, pulleys. No one can understand, even today, how he managed to cut and move huge stone blocks. Cathay found that when he applied the harmonical mathematics basis to the position on the Earth's surface geomagnetically and geometrically, that the same harmonic values popped up in the area where Ed had built the castle and his park. I'd always said that he knew the secrets of gravity and magnetic fields, and he was also said that he knew about how to build the pyramids, how they were built. So it appears likely that he might have been telling the truth. Ed performed many strange experiments with magnetism, although he had no source of conventional electricity. He hinted to neighbours that he was on the verge of a monumental breakthrough, and he was going to publish these results. His book, however, is incomprehensible, just like Einstein's unified theory. Just as he always worked in secret, he also preferred to take his own photographs, posing in a particular suit with his box brownie. In 1980, an old film was found. The quality isn't great, but this is thought to be some of the best film that was ever made. One morning in December of 1951, Ed put on his only suit, hopped on a bus and checked into the Miami County Hospital. The doctors were appalled at his condition and found that he was almost near to death of malnutrition. But then one day he suddenly died quietly in his sleep. Even after his death, Ed left a few surprises. Neighbours guarded the grounds until authorities could make an official investigation. They found his living quarters ingenious as the rest of Coral Castle. They also found $3,800 in crisp $100 bills and what resembled a treasure map. Now, All attempts to follow the directions of this map were futile. Nothing seemed to correspond to normal three-dimensional geometry. Ed left many mysteries, a lot of money, and a castle for his Sweet 16. Was she a real person, or was she just a figment of his imagination? Coral Castle has continued to baffle scientists, engineers and scholars since it opened to the public in 1923. Many stories and wild theories emerge over the years about Ed and how he built his castle. Some say he levitated the blocks with psychic powers, or singing to the stones. Others suggest Ed had arcane knowledge of magnetism and so-called earth energies. Coral Castle has appeared countless times in books, magazines and television shows. Billy Idol also wrote a song about the place called Sweet 16. The park is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Now, for decades, the park's featured a perfectly balanced stone gate there. Despite its weight, would easily swing open with strong breeze or even push of a finger. How it worked remained a mystery until 1986, when it stopped moving altogether. When the gate was removed, it was revealed that it was rotating on a metal shaft, and it rested on a Ford truck bearing. As strange and amazing the site is, the history is equally improbable. It was created just by one man, Ed Leedskalnin, who worked alone for 28 years until his death in 1951. It's quite obvious that moving large stones is no easy task. As an example, the most significant restoration of megaliths of Stonehenge took place in 1958 and 1964. In an article in a New Scientist magazine dated January 2009, Brian Edwards, a student of the University of West of England and Bristol, said Stonehenge isn't the only ancient site in the UK to have been transformed in recent years. Even many of the local people in Avebury are unaware that in many times the stones were put up around about the 1930s. Now, David Batchelor, the English Heritage senior archaeologist, stated, "A decision not to include the work that took place at Stonehenge in any official guides was taken upon in 1960s. The first restoration being in 1901. One of the leaning stones was straightened and set in a concrete base. Further dramatic renovations continued in the 1920s, where 6 stones were moved and re-erected. About 40 years later, a crane was used to reposition 3 stones and a fallen lintel, which was actually replaced." He went on to say, "In many cases, there is a huge difference between what historians know and what the general public know, or what they're consciously aware of. But one thing is for sure, all restorations were tremendous undertakings. Lifting these huge blocks of stone was next to impossible, as larger equipment was brought in to deal with the situation. How one man was able to move such huge stones at Coral Castle on his own with basic equipment is scientifically impossible." As years passed, a number of specialists have come forward to discuss their theories as to how Ed managed such an incredible feat, utilising specifically engineered pieces of equipment. However, it would seem that the process of cutting out huge stone blocks, lifting them, and somehow moving them from one location to another is still up for debate. It's rather a sad story as to who Ed, often referred to as his Sweet 16, was never really discovered. His amazing monuments will stand the test of time, a dedication to the mystery woman perhaps. No one has ever satisfactorily explained how Ed managed to create such a masterpiece. Some say he knew the secrets about levitating stone using sound and electricity. Some believe he was party to some extraterrestrial secrets like the one seemingly imparted to so many ancient civilizations around the world. Or perhaps it's just amazing what some people can do with a broken heart. Thank you for watching Ancient Mysteries. If you do have any comments, please put them below and we will get back to you. And please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Thank you.